Okay, in this video, I'm going to tell you exactly how I prepare for an ultramarathon. I'm going to tell you a specific journey that I took from going from a mid-pack athlete to winning one of Europe's toughest ultramarathons and setting the course record. The first point is you've got to figure out what is the goal? What does the race look like in terms of what is the course? How far is it? How much elevation is involved? How mountainous or hilly is it? What do you have access to in the race in terms of fuel and hydration? How frequent are the aid stations or the drink stations? How hot is it going to be? And how does that change during the course of a race? If it's an ultramarathon, if it's a long race, it might be cooler at the start than it is towards the middle and the end of the race. You've got to factor that in as well. Altitude might play a factor. You've got to think about these things and how that might affect your pacing. Estimated time. How long do you expect to be out there? Once you know all these things, then you can put a plan in place. And it blows my mind how many runners make this mistake. So you don't need to make this mistake. Even if it's your first ultramarathon, you can bypass this. The mistake that I see people make is they plan their race, but right at the last moment, which means they don't have any time to implement this practice into their training. Let me explain. Once you know the course, once you know the goal, the elevation, the heat, the altitude, the drink stations, everything I just mentioned, then you can simulate that in training. And the more that you simulate that in training, the more you're setting yourself up for success in the race. So for my race, these were the key points. And I'll use an extreme race that I went from being a mid-pack runner to being able to set the course record after many years of trying and win the race, so that you can see the difference once you implement these methods and this preparation, the difference that it makes. But it's 50K uphill, so it couldn't be any more extreme. So you're having to deal with relentlessly going uphill for a long period of time at an average gradient of 6 to 6.5%. And when you're going up a mountain, this is the same for any ultra trail race or any mountainous race, it's not a consistent 6.5%. So sometimes you go up a switchback and it's 20 to 25%. And this race specifically gets tougher and steeper gradient as you get towards the top of the mountain, like most mountains. So it starts at city level at 800 meters altitude and then rises to the top, the peak, the finish at 3,350 meters. So you've got to go up 2,500 meters. And then there's the heat. On the start line, it's 30 degrees. It's August, it's summer, it's Spain, and it's the south of Spain, so it's particularly hot. But it rises very, very quickly. As soon as the sun comes up at about 7:30, 8 o'clock, it rises very, very quickly. As soon as you see that first sun, it's at 35 to 40 degrees. And then in the middle of the race, I'm expecting it to be 40 to 45 degrees. And then there's the drink stations. I know within that race that for the first 35K, until it gets really tough, the drink stations are every 5K. Then after 35K, they're every 3K. So you know that you've got access to drink stations, but what is on those drink stations? It blows my mind how many people are going to a big city marathon or an ultramarathon and they haven't learned what's going to be there. It might be just water. In this case, it's water, it's cola, and it's fruit. It's usually bananas and oranges. Those things I'm not going to touch, but I'll touch the water. And then if it's a city marathon that you're preparing for, you've got to know whether it's Lucozade, whether it's Gatorade, whether it's Powerade, because those will have a different effect on you slightly. It's good to get used to those things in your training to simulate the race. And then if you think it couldn't get any more tough, you've got the altitude. So at 25 kilometers, you're already at 1,800 meters. It's kind of medium altitude. That might have an effect on you. It probably will have an effect on you. At 35K, you're at 2,500 meters. That's definitely going to slow you down. So you've got to think, you've got to work back from that. How can you pace it in order to hit your goal when you're dealing with thinner air and therefore you're not able to move forward as fast? Once you know all that, again, you can work back from the goal, so you can plan your attack and you can plan how long you expect to be out there. So that's going to help you plan your pacing, but more importantly, it's going to help you plan your fueling. Now, I knew that I wanted to go for the course record. The course record was 3 hours and 50 minutes. So I was going to be out there for about 4 hours, and I wanted to take 80 grams of carbohydrate per hour. 80 times 4 hours is 320 grams. How am I going to take that in? So I've got to have my plan A. If everything's going perfectly, I'm gonna have just sports drink. How am I gonna get that? There's gonna be a cyclist next to me, which is a huge advantage, I know, as an elite athlete. You also got your drinks at the drink stations. So if the cyclist has a puncture or is not able to continue with me, I've got that plan B. I've also got a couple of gels on me so that if it takes him 30, 45 minutes to fix that puncture, worst case scenario, I'm good for that hour. So now you've got your goal. You know what your goal looks like and you know all the obstacles that can potentially get in your way. So you know then your pacing strategy and your fueling strategy. And then you've got to implement that into the training. And what does the training look like? For this race, specifically for me, so 50 kilometers uphill, what I wanted to do is get to a point where I could run the final 35K to the peak. And that would be my long run. That would be my biggest long run. If I could do that and fuel it in exactly the same way that I wanted to fuel the race, I knew that was gold. I also knew that if I could do a number of 20 to 25K runs exactly on the simulated course, and if you've not got access to the course, and again, it's advantageous if you can actually be on the course. And that's why there's such a big difference to somebody who moves to UTMB or moves to the Western States course to train on that specific course. If you can train, especially if it's mountainous, especially if it's trail, if you can train as much as possible on the course, it's really going to help you out. The next best thing is to simulate that. So maybe you've got, for this specific race, I had other mountains that I would go to that I could do extended long runs at around about the same gradient for 15, 20, 25K. And that was possible for me, even during the winter when I was in Thailand. If you can train on the course, what that's going to give you is not just the gradient and the exact race course so you get familiar with the course, it's also going to give you the heat and the altitude. And getting used to that is really going to help you out on race day. What I'm doing by running the last 35K of that 50K race is I'm running as much on the hardest part of the course as I possibly can. So I'm making those runs as tough as I possibly can for myself. What I also want to do is multiple 25K runs on exactly the same course. And again, I've got access to the same heat, the same altitude. I'm getting familiar with the course to the point where I know every single curve and every part of the course. It's a massive advantage. What I also want to do is my interval training on the course. So that Wednesday interval training, I want to do that on different parts of the course. Now, some of that will be right at the start, and some of it will be midway through the course, and some of it will be right at the top of the mountain. So I'm simulating different, or I'm training on exactly the same altitude that it's going to be. So I get to feel how that is, and get to feel what that pace should feel like for the right effort level. I'm also looking at the gradient in different parts of the course. And again, I'm learning every single curve and learning every piece of that course. So I've got all the advantages that I can give myself before race day. All the rest of the running, and I get asked this a lot, should you be, if you're training for a mountainous race, should you be doing all your runs on the mountains? No, all the rest of my running is on a flat, ideally off-road, buttery trail where I can run easy, usually following the river, and it's usually flat or very, very close to flat. And it's just me doing a recovery run or an easy run. Now that training plan will last 12 weeks and then afterwards a 10-day taper. And that is sufficient for me. As long as I'm fit before those 12 weeks, I'm fit to be able to start the plan, that I can really attack that 12-week specific plan. And I know that I can put myself in a place to not just win the race, but set the course record. And in that final 10-day taper, what that would usually look like is I'd reduce the volume, yeah, but I'd still want to keep the zip in the legs. So about 4 or 5 days before the race, I would do 3 times 10 minutes on the hill again, and that would be no more than zone 3. So I'd be pushing, but I'd still be pretty comfortable. Then I know I'm ready, and this is the important point. You're going to get the race result, or you want the race result that you've trained for. And in that final 10 days, there's usually 2 types of people. There's the type of people that are getting fresh, they're not doing the same level of training, and therefore they think they can go even faster than the race that they've trained for. Or you get people that start to have that nervous energy, start to have that anxiety about race day, and start to doubt themselves. So before the race has even started, they start to readjust the goal down. Both of those 2 people will come unstuck. And it's where most runners fall to pieces. They either over-aim or they under-aim, and so they don't get the race that they've actually trained for. At this point, you've got to remind yourself of all the hard work you've done. No heroics, I've just got to execute my race plan. And so you go for it with full confidence, and you go with the mentality that if the wheels fall off 80% through the race, and you don't complete or you don't get your time, you've won. And you've succeeded for 80% of the race. And if you switch your mentality to that thinking, you cannot lose. You can only win or learn. And that is incredibly powerful. And it actually frees you up, especially in that last 10 days when you're tapering, you've got excess energy, you're thinking about the race. It's a really, really, really good place to be in if you can think that I'm just going to enjoy it. And that's my only goal, is to enjoy race day. I've done all the hard work. There's nothing I can do now apart from execute. I hope you got something from that. And the race that I've been describing is Subida al Pico Valletta. It's an incredible race. And I've got a race camp where you can come and join me for the week. We'll enjoy Granada, we'll enjoy Andalusia and everything it has to offer, including amazing food. So if you want to come and join, click on this link below. And if you think you've got a friend that would like to come and join, please share this video.